Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 980 of our daily content grind. We are less than 3 weeks away from video number 1000 of our daily streak, and I should probably come up with what that's going to be. I think it's about time to figure out what the 1000th video of this daily grind is actually going to entail, so I'm going to get on that later, but right now that's a future TJ problem. Present TJ is going to answer a Patreon request. So do you remember a while back I did a video all about how weird the Revenge of the Fallen Scout class figures were? Just like, because the movies were making so much more money than Transformers had ever made in its existence, Hasbro designers just felt like they could get away with just about anything. So we got transforming toasters, biplanes, crazy stuff. And it made for a very interesting run of figures. So I have been requested to do a tier listing of all the figures from that time and the subsequent figures of the Scout class run. Because Scout class was a thing all the way back to Beast Wars, because what was basic class Transformers eventually transitioned into Scout class, and they came and went periodically depending on the series that came out. But this was the final run. From Revenge of the Fallen all the way into early 2011, after which Cyberverse took over the small-scale line for Transformers, and then Legends kind of became the small scale when they got sized up, and that moved into what would eventually become Core Class. So this is like the last era of a really popular size class of Transformers, so I think it makes sense to do a tier list of all of it. And because there's only about 30-odd figures in it, we can include the repaints as well, starting with Backfire, a repaint of a toy better known as Knockout. And this bike always gives me like vibes of like an old school Kamen Rider bike with its white and red color scheme. The mold itself is pretty good. I do enjoy the mold, so it's not the best color scheme this mold that has had. We're going to see better ones here. But I think for now, I think it's a good way to start up in the premium price. It's a fun figure. Also, the idea that it has like panels that you can pop off and like re-tab in as like wings, which may or may not be an intentional design point, but it makes it really neat. So I'm going to include it as a bonus here. So that moves us on to Beachcomber, which, by the way, yes, I'm trying to include visuals this time. Please forgive me if I forget to click through after we finish. I will try to keep up. But Beachcomber is a repaint of the Dune Buggy kind of racer, which is coming up. Dune Runner is the original version of the mold. So, of course, it's a Dune Buggy. It's going to be redone as Beachcomber. It doesn't make a bad Beachcomber, though. In the gray and the blue, it doesn't look too bad at all. It's maybe a little bit dull. Maybe just a little bit dull, and maybe a little bit too militaristic for Beachcomber. But putting original characterization aside, the mold itself, I think, is just kind of okay. I think it's appropriately mid. And there are, I think, more interesting color schemes for it than Beachcomber. So I think it's good to put right there at retail. We will see where he ends up as this list evolves. Moving into Breacher. Now we're talking about the same color scheme, but now we're dealing with a very different vehicle mode and a completely original figure. Okay, so Breacher's a really, really cool one. Breacher is genuinely one of the cooler ones in this entire run. So I love the fact that it can actually interact with the larger figure Sea Spray. That is great. The overall vehicle mode has some like vibes of Cybertron Scattershot, which is great for me. But overall, and then the robot mode just looks super cool. The robot just looks super cool. So I think he's a good candidate. I think he's a good candidate to move all the way up. Yeah, I think so. I think he's Holy Grail level. He's a really, really nice figure. Moving on to Brimstone. This is another one we didn't talk about in the Scout video because this one came later on during Transformers 2010. And this one is another oddball because this is a custom chopper, like a custom motorcycle with the long fork in front. Really cool look. Really cool look. And then unique robot mode. It's very spindly and thin, which is very unusual for a Transformer. You get a skull face, like teeth hanging off the front. You get buzzsaw hands. Like, he looks mean. In both modes, he looks absolutely vicious. I do remember liking this toy a lot. I remember liking this toy a lot. Maybe not as much as Breacher, because due to his spindliness, due to how thin he doesn't feel quite as solid. Obviously, he doesn't. So maybe a little bit more cautious playing with him than I would be a figure like Breacher. But I do think it deserves to be up there. I do think it deserves some level of notoriety in the premium price point. That said, he does have a repaint to discuss. The repaint being Chop Saw, and it's same mold, same idea behind it. However, the colors this time are based on Armada Sideswipe, or Armada Sideways. Excuse me. Yeah, the purple and the yellow work. I really like the purple and yellow. The blue works too. The blue and the greens kind of work too, but the blue and yellows I do think is a nicer color combination on a motorcycle. At least this type of motorcycle. So this is a very personal preference thing. You're free to like one or the other. But I do tend to like Chop Saw just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Okay, back to this mold again, and this time it is Crank Start, which is a very unusual name for a dune buggy. We're going to talk about a mold that seems like that would be a much better fit, but that comes later. So, Crank Start is, again, it's the dune buggy mold, but this time the color contrast is stark. It's black and silver with hits of with like a red visor, which is really mean looking. The big thing here is like it's got elements of copper coloring to it, which does give it a nice, interesting pop. I do think, again, the mold is okay, but I do think the color scheme elevates it. It does look nicer than Beachcomber does. You know, G1 nostalgia completely put aside here. It's just a mean-looking bot. You know, and for a Decepticon, that is basically what I am after. Now we move on to Depth Charge, and Depth Charge is one of our... hang on. Who do we move on to? Sorry. My list is different on this side. We're moving to Dead End. How about we talk about Dead End instead? Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Okay, so we're going... Yeah, let's move it. We're talking about Dead End. Dead End is a super cool looking vehicle, because it's that concept car dome look that is just... you know, like what we thought cars would look like kind of car. Or like if you want to spend $300,000 on a car, that kind of car. It's a super cool looking vehicle. The transformation's okay. It's not the greatest transformation on the world, but it does the job. It's interesting enough. And again, not a bad color scheme. Maybe not the greatest, but not bad. I do like the reds and the blacks all work together, because of course they do. And it has that same hit of bronze. So it hits an interesting point. I do like the head sculpt on it a lot. That's one of the things I really like about it, is it's that head sculpt does pretty good. I'm gonna put it down to retail release, but I am gonna put it ahead of Crank Start, because I think the vehicle is way more interesting than the military dune buggy. We do have a repaint coming up. We'll see where that ends up. By the way, if you think some are missing out of this, I did try to include everything I could remember and everything I could look up. The only things I think are missing are the unreleased repaints. So, like, there's supposed to be a Breacher repaint that never existed, so I had to double check to make sure that was a thing. A repaint that did come out, however, is Deadlift, a repaint of Dirt Boss. Now, I'm already going to tell you, this is going to work up high because it's a forklift transformer. It is a very, very unique vehicle mode that... I don't believe we've replicated before, and I believe it was the first one as well. So it's a very oddity. It's a big oddity in the Transformers realm to have a completely unique vehicle mode that no one else has aped. So Deadlift, very cool. I love how the forks end up as like tonfa weapons underneath the arms. It's a neat little transformation. Deadlift scores higher points because the color scheme is based on spoons from GoBots, because they were the previous only transforming forklift toy in existence. So I'm moving them up to Holy Grail level. I really like the mold. I like it better when it's going for an interesting homage. Okay, list, can we talk about Depth Charge now and get everything back in order? Yes, we can. Depth Charge is one of our very rare aquatic transformers. It is, I believe, a patrol boat style of military aquatic vehicle. because it does look ready for combat, but it is, and it does look like it's supposed to be much larger than the scout class would imply, but it still seems like, you know, smaller than like obviously like on the smaller end of like of naval ships. The overall look is cool. I do think the robot mode is a little bit odd looking. Like it's different, but not in like a it makes it look cool way. And this is gonna be completely down to personal opinion. But I think as cool as the vehicle mode looks, I don't think the robot mode conveys it quite as well. I think it looks a little bit, I don't know, just like a little bit oddly proportioned in some areas. So that lets me down a little bit. Yeah, I think for now, I think for now it might go. I don't know. I kind of want to put it right there. I kind of want to put it right there. Let me think on it. Let me think on it, and then we might come back to that and switch it around, because I know there's a lot of fans of that mold. I'm not particularly huge on it these days. We move on to the other forklift, like the proper one. This is Dirt Boss, and yeah, no surprise, I'm putting him straight up to the Holy Grail below Deadlift. It's just a nice color. I do like that, as long as they were doing like Revenge of the Fallen, like somewhat like a construction style set of Constructicons, that they went ahead and threw in a forklift as well that kind of works in as like the small guy of that group, even if it doesn't integrate into any version of Devastator. I do think it's cool that we had that beside the actual Constructicons, and that it was actually done in the neon green. So it's a very brief look at what a Constructicon forklift would have looked like. Other than that, again, it is a neat figure. While the color scheme I do like, and I will admit, you know, like it doesn't hit me as well as like the GoBot homage, but it does still do cool stuff. And I will admit, like especially like in the center torso and how the colors are laid out there, that part I do like better than I like on Deadlift. But you know, that just helps them both stand out from each other. So that's again very much a preferential thing. I might be leaning heavy on the GoBot there. Moving on. So, yeah, we're dealing with a lot of repaints before we get to the main figures. This is Dive Bomb. We know him better as Ransack. Yes, yeah. Trying to keep all those names straight. This is the World War II bomber. This is the bi-wing plane. And it's done up in Red Baron color scheme. So on the one hand, this does help the vehicle mode a lot, because the Red Baron is like the classic style of, you know, like a fighter plane of this era. I don't think it does the robot mode any favors, though. And we'll get to that when we start talking about Ransack. But I do like the homage. I do like the historic color scheme to it. Admittedly, the biplane is cool, but the toy itself is kind of okay. It's a great novelty piece, and I'm going to mark it a little bit higher because it is a novelty piece. But I will acknowledge, as far as just like structurally designed and just like as far as like how good a toy feels, there's absolutely better ones in this list. I am still going to put it premium. Because of how unique it is, but it is definitely something that could be a little bit, it could be a little bit better. That's going to put us onto Dune Runner. The original version of the mold we've already talked about twice. This is just standard colors. It's military camouflage. You know, as far as like the military aspect of this vehicle, obviously conveys that better than the other two. It's still the same mid figure. It's still about the same as far as just like, yeah, that's kind of okay. He's just kind of okay. And we're going to put that there. And I'm debating something now that I look at the listing and what we've got coming up. Because I gotta admit, this is a pretty strong list of toys. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the scout classes they did during this era were all not bad. Like, most of them are actually pretty decent figures. In my brain, I'm like, it's way too top heavy. You haven't put any in bargain bin yet. Should the Dune buggies move to bargain bin? We'll figure that out. For now, Ejector. Now we get to talk about the Gremlin Toaster. I love this one. I absolutely love this one. I love it because, number one, you'd never look at it and see that's going to turn into a toaster. I think the transformation's great on it. I love little touches like the power cord being his little gremlin tail. I like the four-armed look he has. That's very rare in Transformers, and I like how that looks. Obviously, the gremlin head on him is very unique. Uh, yeah. Is it weird that I really want to make him the top? That I really want to make the Toaster Transformer the top of this list? Because I think there's just so much character in it. It's just so weird. No, I am never going to get any play value out of a toaster, but I think it's hilarious that a toaster can transform. And it's this little, this little gremlin looking guy. Love him. I really, really like that toy. I really like that toy. We are moving on to Fire Trap, which is, a little bit of it's a bit of an homage to Brawn as far as overall look and design, and the color scheme, obviously. I'm not. It works and it doesn't. It's a little bit weird. It's a little bit weird in that he kind of works and he kind of doesn't. This is one of those times where I kind of feel like the standard color scheme on the verse version might be just a little bit better. Just because it doesn't, like there's something about the, like, orange and green is hard to mix without clashing. It's a very tricky color scheme. I don't think someone handles it tremendously well. I think the yellow and the gold, the oranges to this is just a little bit too dark. If it lent a little bit brighter like the original Brawn, might be a different story. That said, it is a nice, unique mold, at least, as a little, like, armed truck. I do like that it has a unique design element to how it transforms, with it, like, becoming this, like, hoodie-looking backpack kind of thing. It is an okay figure. It's okay figure. I do like it a little bit better than some of these others, though. I want to put, like, high retail release. I think that's the home for it. We move into Hubcap. And Hubcap was, like, out of nowhere, like, okay, number one, we got an old school car. And I think immediately to myself, where's the crank start name now? But Hubcap does make a really nice figure. He's got a lot of, like, traditional Transformer element to how he works and how his transformation is engineered. But he comes across and turns into this, very movie-esque robot that, feels good. Like, I really like the overall look of him. He is fun to mess with and transform. I like that it's an old school car, which is a very rare thing for Transformers to do. Again, this was a magical time where they get away with just about anything. Hubcap is a really, really good figure. Really, really, really good figure. I'm putting him Holy Grail. If the Big Daddy version of it had actually made it to release, there would be the one to top Ejector. Unfortunately, no. Color scheme is good on him. I like the color scheme, the orange, red to him, the silver, the hits of standard orange too. He's a nice color scheme. He ain't the Big Daddy color scheme, though. That would have pushed him over the top. Let's talk about Insecticon. So, one of the few Transformers that's, like, close to real-life scale compared to how it was in the movie, at least somewhat close. It's a nice little scrungly little bug guy. And again, you got the four-arm thing going, which is, again, rare, but we've done it twice in one tier listing. It's an okay figure. Nothing terribly exciting about it, other than, like, it's, if you want to swarm, here's your troop builder. Again, not terribly interesting. Not terribly interesting. I do like the toy. Don't get me wrong. I do like the toy. I just feel like it could be doing a little bit more. That's the downside of a lot of, like, bug figures like this, especially, where it's like, I don't feel like I'm doing a whole lot of transforming to you. Because, it's just kind of like rearranging your arms and legs a little bit and standing you up. So there he falls a little bit flat. But I do like the look of him. I do like that it's an insect and you put a little bit of variety in there. That works for me. All right, here we go with Knockout. This is the version of the mold I had. I still think it is the best looking color scheme. Yes, I am incredibly biased because it is two-tone green and black, which I think is a very, very difficult color scheme to get wrong. It looks awesome. He looks absolutely awesome. Mold-wise, I still have him up in the premium. I still think he's a little bit below Brimstone because he's not quite as unique overall. I just really, really like that look. I really, really like that look. All right, that moves us into another homage figure. This is Nightbeat, redone from the Dead End mold. This one feels a little bit forced in. It is using the color scheme and arrangement for G1 Nightbeat. Again, like a lot of the movie homages, it kind of tones things down. He's got more of a mustard gold color to him instead of yellow, things like that. The face mask is now silver, so he does cast a little bit of a unique look to him. I don't know, the sculpt is just a little bit too mean to feel like an Autobot. I feel like this mold should have stayed Decepticon, especially to kind of paint it as a classic G1 character. I think takes it down. Yeah, the red color scheme is just better. The red color scheme is just better. I don't think the blue fits it nearly as well. I'm trying to keep all of the repaints close to the originals, because mold-wise, it's still solid. Mold-wise, it's still fine. But I don't think the blue hits quite as well on that mold as the red and the bronze does. So we're marking them down a little bit further. Marking them down a little bit further. Now here we got Oil Pan. And here's another interesting figure because the original mold, which we might have to add to it because now that I look at it, it's not in my listing, which is weird. Which is weird because we've talked about this, because I supposedly grabbed every figure there was, and now we have one missing. So we might have to amend this list a little bit later. But Oil Pan, the mold itself, is okay. It feels like it's trying very hard to be somewhat G1, like G1 breakdown and overall styling on the original version of the mold. But it is doing it's doing a little bit of uniqueness. But it doesn't hit me the right way. And I think this color scheme is actually worse than the original. It's overall not a bad toy. It's an okay figure. And the more I think about it, the more I kind of want to, like, boom, boom, boom. Just because those molds are not bad, but they're not thrilling to me. So, I think that's where maybe that is where the bargain bin lives. Because Oil Pan, I kind of want to put there. Because it's I don't know, it's not doing quite enough, and it's not the most solid of figures either. If it was a little bit more solid, like some of these others coming up are, then we would discuss. But as it stands, Okay, we have amended the list. We are now including Breakdown as a figure, and I guess, yeah, we kind of know where he's going to go. It's kind of like middle ground of the retail release. And again, same points. I do think the color scheme works a lot better. Because, not just because it's a classic color scheme, it just seems to, I just like it better than the orange and the dark blue. But again, the figure is a little bit weird. It's a little bit off. I don't know, maybe not as much as I kind of harped on. I'm gonna bump it a little bit. I'll bump it a little bit. This is gonna get me in charge. This is gonna get me in trouble with the depth charge people. But we will accept that. We'll accept a little bit of flack here because this is my personal opinion. It's my list. See, that brings us to Ransack. And Ransack, again, now this is where, because he's got a look to him like he is very much an old school biplane. But what gets me about this is it gets him looking a little bit more like a junk bot. Like he's been around for a long time and he's just kind of hammered and screwed together. And I like that. I like that better than the red and black of the Red Baron toy. So I definitely want to put, so I think he belongs higher up than the Red Baron version. He just kind of has a lot more character to him as a result, which I really, really like. And I'm trying to be quick about this because I just realized how long this video has been going for. So moving on, now we're taking a look at the last of these motorcycles. This is Reverb, and I feel like this is the worst one of the batch. I believe it's a Decepticon, and it's an extremely bright color scheme for a Decepticon. Doesn't feel all that evil to me, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, in contrast to his previous release of Knockout, yeah, it is a stark contrast, so if you didn't like the green and the black, this is a very big departure that might appeal to you. Not so much to me. I think it's just got a little bit too much brightness going on. I need something to break it up a little bit, and that maroon red that shows up in robot mode just ain't doing enough for me in order to do that. So he's still high up because it's a good mold, but I'm putting him below the rest. I think it's the worst of the batch. And I also lied because we got one more. I just remembered. Okay, moving on. Moving on. We talk about Roll Bar. Roll Bar is interesting in that he is a delivery truck, which is again an unusual alt mode. That said, as far as a lot of these go, he is definitely on the dull side of things. It's a boring figure, I feel like, compared to a lot of the others. I mean, the alt mode is different, but it's just not an interesting vehicle, though, you know? It's not like a custom motorcycle kind of alt mode or a biplane, you know? It's just, I don't know, it's like a delivery truck, like you'd see outside of a grocery store. It's not that thrilling. It's not that thrilling. And the fact that he's got so much, like, shell kibble hanging off because his transformation is basically turning inside out, it hurts his overall look as well. I think we put him down to the bargain bin. I'm not a big fan of that figure, unfortunately. Oh, but speaking of figures I'm not a fan of, Scalpel's a mess of a toy. The alt mode seems to be a made-up microscope. I couldn't find one that was similar to it. I could be wrong, because admittedly, I'm not an expert on microscopes. But I feel like at that point, like, yes, there's novelty to it, but like we've had microscope transformers before. Hello, Perceptor. And those actually worked, by the way. Perceptor had like Perceptor had like a weird, like, kinda works-ish functionality to his scope. Can't do the same thing with Scalpel, obviously, because he's like a scientific microscope. He's an electron microscope. But when you get him into his robot mode, things fall apart, literally. Because this thing has a very high chance of breakage right out of the package because his ball joints that hold all of his little spindly legs together are way too thin. So a lot of these are broken very, very easily. It's just not a fun figure. It's just not a fun figure whatsoever. There's a lot of better things you could do. There's a lot of better examples in this run. Now we're moving on to Scattershot. We talked about the mold before, but in this one, the colors are a little bit more subdued, a little bit more, it comes together just a little bit better. It does have the name and the color scheme of Cybertron Scattershot, but beyond that, everything is pretty unique. Everything is brand new. And again, it does have a bit of a unique appearance to it because of the way it handles the front end of the truck in the robot mode. Where's that the back end? It's been a while since I've seen it. I think it's front end. But yeah, it's again, like we said before, not a bad figure. I do, I'm willing to put it top of retail release. I think so. I do like it better than the Brawn homage in Fire Trap. Just because I think the color scheme just works out a little bit better. It's not trying to make clashing colors work or anything. Sky Stalker. Whoo, here's another one that is, yeah, this mold is fantastic. It's just such a cool looking mold. It's a very intimidating Decepticon presence this toy has. I like the hook weapons that you get out of it. That's a pretty menacing thing to include. Super cool looking, like a flying wing style vehicle. It's a really good one. It's a really good one. Then you have integration with larger figures with Mind Wipe. That again puts it pretty high. I'm gonna put him like really high up the Holy Grail. He's a very good figure. He's very fun. Very, very nice. Okay, let's talk about yet another orange repaint. There's a lot of orange repaints, by the way. We still have a few to go. So this one looks like Wheelie, but his name is Slapdash, because we can't use the name Wheelie when we used it in the movie. Yeah, it's a weirdly appropriate one, because like that dome vehicle, I think, is what inspired it. It's a goofy, fun homage. The two-tone orange kind of works. I do think the red and black obviously look better. This is a little bit too orange, Like some of it is because the colors eventually get a little bit grating to look at, but also because there's some details that start bleeding together when it's orange on orange. You know, like even this little preview shot of mine, the head's kind of getting lost in the orange around it. So I think that was a misstep. I think it was a misstep on Hasbro's part. So we got to put them below. We got to put them below Dead End. Moving on, we're looking at Sonar. So once again, we are back to the depth charge mold. However, dark, stealthy colors this time. You know, with like a nice black for the vehicle mode, giving way to like a dark blue, some hits of silver here and there. It's a way more interesting color scheme than the flat, like, military gray camo that was on the previous version. So sonar goes higher than depth charge. There's still a little bit of oddness to the robot mode that kind of off-puts me. And I'll be honest, like, some of the other features are kind of the same. I don't know why it works for me on some, but not on depth charge. It just kind of does. You know what? Here, I'll be nice. I'll bump them up above the breakdown mold. How about that? How about that? Or can we agree with that? Or do I've changed my mind so many times on this list. I'm sorry for all the jump cuts, by the way, because I'm getting over a sinus infection that's still trying to creep up and kill me again. So we need to get on before it does that. Let us talk about Sunspot. It's fun when they get to borrow the Marvel names, right? So this kind of fits in the same category of, like, it's way too menacing of a mold to really work in bright colors. Yeah, I don't like how it looks in the creamsicle. And, like, this is weird because, like, I'm trying to keep all the molds together on this list, but I feel like the orange and white are so bright on a mold that just does not suit it. I feel like it drags it down even farther, you know? Like put Sunspot, like, here, like, just above Breacher. I think Skystalker is a better toy than Breacher. I don't think Sunspot's a better toy than Breacher, though. I think like, I'm actually gonna just, like, boom. I'll break it up. My rules, my list. Yeah, just not the designated, because it is still, because I admit that this is a personal preference thing, and I know people are gonna like the brighter color. And it's still a great mold. It's still a fantastic mold, one of the best scouts. However, it just gets hurt. I think it gets dragged down by that color scheme a lot. So for me, I got to put it a little bit lower than I do for the rest. Okay, this is Trenchmouth. In my list, somewhere in my list of, like, maybe the most disgusting of names. And again, it is that motorcycle mold that is done in black and red. So it matched very well with some of the others on this list. But as a color scheme, we've kind of discussed this. It's just kind of underwhelming compared to some of the others. You know, two-tone red two-tone red with black is kind of, like, very opposing to its original two-tone green and black, you know? So in that sense, it makes for a good mirror Decepticon versus the original. But it's not the most thrilling on this mold. It looks fine. It looks good. I just don't think it's the best color scheme that it's had. I will say, I do think it is second to the original. Again, this is me being biased because I think the green and black looks amazing. So we'll leave it there. Yeah, we're going to leave it there. That is going to bring us to wide load. So once again, we are dealing with that mold again. We're dealing with the roll bar mold again, and unfortunately, things still kind of apply to that roll bar mold. And it's worse. Now we're dealing with a mold that is kind of subpar compared to the others, and it's kind of a bland, kind of bad color scheme. The wiki mentions butter, and that's kind of it. Like, it's like a butter yellow robot. It looks like he will melt if you put a flashlight on him for too long. I just think it's a very poor color choice. I think it's just a very, very poor color choice. And that is going to leave us with our final one on the listing, and that is Windcharger. And this is fascinating because Windcharger is like, it's like weirdly like classics in style. This is like one of those, because remember, Reveal the Shield was a line where they kind of mixed in G1 stuff along with movie stuff to kind of sneak it into retailers to kind of prove that G1 sold. So Windcharger ended up getting a little bit of the Bumblebee treatment where he becomes more standard as a Transformer design, but he does keep some of his original like patterns as far as his design goes. And he's a really good figure, you know? Again, it's kind of like, so here's the thing with the breakdown figure, it's okay. But I think straying so close to the G1, well, it strays so close to the G1 style in its color scheme and vehicle mode without retaining that spirit with the robot mode design, I think overall hurts the overall effect. Whereas this just went for all around modern G1. And And it worked, and especially for the time when that was actually kind of rare, and that it was a brand new thing to start getting modern G1 toys back in the line since Classics. So I like him. I like this toy a lot. I like it a lot. I'm going to put it top of premium price. Maybe not the Holy Grail, because admittedly, it's not in the spirit of any of the others. It's very much an outlier for all these movie style-esque designs. But that said, it's still a really good toy. It's still a really good toy compared to the rest of them. Oh, and that is going to be our list. This might take... I've had to stop a few times, so I really don't know how long the final video is, but this does feel like it's going to be a pretty long one. So if you made it this far, thank you very much. If you continue to watch even as I put your favorite of the Scouts low on the list, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. I'm even in my own mind, I'm kind of surprised, but yeah, this was just an incredibly solid run of figures for about 2.5 years or so. And it was just a really fun, exciting time. There's just a lot of weirdness going on, a lot of experimentation, a lot of random weird homages. But it was great. It was great. Those times. So, that is the final run of the Scouts, all ranked. Feel free to disagree in the comments below. And as always, I will see you next time.